Welcome to another episode of Mango People. I'm Lok, I'm Bate. Today, we're talking about food. Food is for everybody, but not all food is for everyone. While cows eat grass, lions hunt animals, big fish eat small fish, humans haven't really defined what we eat. It depends. On what? Depends on your cultural background, where you grew up, family preferences, religion, region, what's trending in diets, your age, your gender, your schedule. The list goes on and on. The reason we're talking about food today is because food is common to all of us. More than sustenance, food is an emotion. Food has cultural context. Food is nostalgia. Food is happiness. Food is comfort. We are, after all, what we eat. And this conversation will help us figure who we really are. Joining us today is Vaibhav Nagori, one of the co-founders of Greener, one of my favorite places to eat. Hi, Vaibhav. Thank you so much for doing this.
So good to be here. Thank you.
Today, we're talking about food, but what we're not talking about is definitely we're not discussing recipes like my mom thinks. We're also not going to get into preachy place where we're telling people what's healthy eating and we're not going to get into diets or anything. The purpose of this conversation is to understand food and our relationship, the relationship of human beings with food. You are from a Jenny business background and
Yes.
your educational background is in engineering.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
So what piqued your interest in food?
I mean, interesting question because you started off with recipes and mom. And of course, I grew up in a Jain family background. So like your introduction, food has a lot to do with where you grew up, what your religious preferences were, what your family type was, who your surroundings were. So I feel that Jainism primarily defined my preferences, and then the immediate pool of people and what their consumption patterns was what continued to keep me on that path. But the interest of food was mom, primarily mom. Like I have years and years of winters where I've just sat next to in the kitchen by the platform where she's cooking the meals, and she would always say that khana kya hai? ये तो 2 minute में ready हो जाएगा. What do you want to eat? So the idea of fresh eating, the idea of immediate eating and maybe healthier eating. I don't want to delve deeper into healthier eating with this context, but mom is the one who brought me so close to food because she was obsessed with it.
No topic is off limits for us. We can definitely dive into healthy eating. The only purpose is not to be preachy and not to have polarized conversations.
Not at all. Yes.
Podcast is for everyone and everyone with all sorts of food preferences and whatever they make of food in their life.
I think people should be able to prefer what they want to eat without anybody imposing their preferences. I see a lot of that happens all around us, politically, religiously. But with my own experience, also I've seen that despite that, people choose, they really choose what they want to eat and they don't want to be completely influenced.
You were talking about mom making food for you guys. And I think that's a very millennial thing also, and like pre-millennial as well, where our food was mostly homemade food and it was local food. And that was our influence growing up. And things have really, like the ecosystem of food has really changed since then. Kids growing up, I assume you have kids.
Yeah, I've got a couple of kids.
A couple of kids.
Yeah, very young, but they're there, yeah.
Okay. So kids growing up these days, what their food looks like is very different. Their influences of food is also different. And we'll get into all of that as we move on with the conversation. What does conscious eating and sustainable living mean to you?
Big words. I know these words like conscious anything and sustainable anything are implied across categories. But I think conscious eating has more to do with knowing the I think it's to do with knowing the nutritive value, the quantity, and knowing the flow of when what should be going into your body. I mean, like your episode says, we are who we eat. Incidentally, that happens to be Greener's first line of introduction.
Oh,
Somehow I didn't
really?
tell you this before. Grandparents or maybe generations before that would always say, okay, these combinations don't work. If you started your meal with that, follow it with that. So generally, while we have a plate full of things in front of us, a table full, and abundance is the problem of this generation, we should genuinely just stop, pause, and remember, yaar, ki the sequencing matters. Some things should not be consumed with some things, even if it's just there. Quantity consumption is important.
Growing up, I've realized every body is different. And like I mentioned in the introduction, even our age matters. Our diet depends on how old we are. And my diet has changed because of my body changing and me growing up. And I completely am in agreement with you about everything that you've mentioned. I'd only like to add for conscious living
Yeah.
is treatment of animals. But yeah, I think it's a huge part of living in a conscious way.
I mean, just I'll just catch on to one subject that you said because you touched old because I've also just hit 40 this year.
Okay.
And I feel that I think the right choices of food, which primarily is the fuel to the body, right? If you put kachra in your system, like imagine your body to be a tank of a car. You put a better quality of petrol, your car performance gets better, right? So as we age and our cellular health and our organ health, all of that will be very much dependent and is dependent on what we're consuming. It's not just about organic or everything, it's about having nutrient rich food at the right time of the day. So, moving on to the idea of conscious living and animal, I mean, we've been straying away from being preachy, but I think humans, of course, were supposed to be hunters and gatherers, and eventually we hunted less and gathered more, which made most of the societies of the world as agri societies because that was the idea of settling down and being secure and having continuous supply of food, which is why uh, farming and agricultural practices gained so much prominence that even animal farming eventually became a thing,
Yeah.
right? Now, while you mentioned that religion plays a role in our choices of consumption, that's also a gray area, I feel, because I don't want to quote a certain religion, but a certain religion predominantly is vegetarian in the country. But if people from that region grew up around water bodies, having fish was very acceptable, even by the priesthood of that religion. So it is a matter of availability. It is a matter of what is closest to you, which is why I think consumption in that way could be called sustainable also, because you're not trying to get something from 1,000 kilometers away to be more conscious. Rather, choose something that's available right next to you in abundance without exploitation of
Resources.
available
Yeah.
resources. Yeah.
I want to understand your relationship with the food that you consume. How do you look at it? Like, if you want me to elaborate on the question, sometimes you have a very codependent relationship with food. That if you are feeling emotionally drained, or if you're feeling stressed, or if there is a lot of work, you tend to lean on food a lot for comfort. And there are people who are very disciplined about food no matter what the circumstance in their life or how busy or not busy they are, their food looks the same day and night, month after month.
Okay.
What is your relationship with food?
So I think I'm obsessed with food, right? I mean, that's the reason where I've moved my engineering career and pushed in the food side in my career. Let's just say, um, to say I want good food. Now I'm also a person who can consistently eat the same meal.
Define good
Again,
food.
flavorful, mouthful. It should have a mix of a lot of things. I think I think like the traditional Indian way of shadarasa, like the six flavors. So I want my food to be mouthful and should have flavor bombs.
Do you want to elaborate on Shadar Rasa, you said? Because I'm not familiar with
Yeah,
it.
shadarasa basically is your Ayurveda derived term which talks about your food having six flavors, which is sweet, sour, salty, astringent, pungent, and bitter. Now, that is why some of our meals traditionally had a little bit of achar, a little bit of something which was a raita based thing, something like a papad. So they were conceptually completing your flavor profile also, while also ensuring that there was nutrient rich. Because I mean, some things that are naturally bitter will have certain minerals which are required for the body.
I'm forgetting his first name, but this is Dr. Africa from Africa. He's a nutritionist, or he was a nutritionist, and he quoted, largely in the context of his culture, that people who eat a lot of salt are inherently angry people. People who eat a lot of sweet are people who are feeling unloved or feel incapable of giving love. Hot sauce, because in their culture, hot sauce is very, very prevalent. That why do we prefer hot sauce? And it was something to do with vinegar, that people who eat a lot of meat, they tend to produce vinegar in their body, and they also seek that in foods outside. So you tend to garnish your food with hot sauce.
Interesting. I think I'll add something to that because that's a preconceived notion I've also created, that people who eat meat have a lot more rage and aggression is something that I have created a bias in my head. Maybe it's not
Although,
true.
of course, there are a lot of angry vegetarians also
Yeah, but
in our
I'm
country.
going in line with Dr. Africa's sequence of foods doing what to what.
Yeah, but for sure, food definitely impacts our mood. Like it definitely does. And if anyone is suffering from, any kind of mood swing, I think the first two things that you could do that have also worked really well for me in life is alter your workout and alter your food, and see if that makes a difference. Instead of like taking some new medicine or something. Of course, like I don't want to get into the medicine aspect, but
No, but this goes back to your previous question when you said that what food is to me. You're right. I mean, there is a pattern where some people just eat food as a sequence or discipline part of their day, and some use food to energize their minds, moods, bodies. And you're right. A mix of timing and a choice of food can really define the way you look through the day. You could be having a really dull day and you could just pick that one thing and that just lightens up your day, and vice versa. You're having a great flow and then somebody just gives you bad food. And bad food is a killer, right? It's a buzzkill.
I have divided our conversation, going further into it, into three parts. We will talk about food preferences. So there are three food preferences known to me, at least, or mankind. Humankind, I'm so sorry, I'll take that back. Veganism, vegetarianism, and meat eating. And I want to explore the different aspects that involve all of these dietary preferences.
Sure.
Let's start with veganism. Do you want to correct me?
No, no, no. Although we are 90%, our offerings are 90% vegan, we use the term plant forward or plant based eating because that is the philosophy we're promoting as a business. I mean, veganism has two kinds of consumers, right? One is a completely conscious, no harm to animal, very Jain philosophy sort of a consumer, right? No harm to animals, and that includes your honey also. So, right? Um, Whereas plant forward is somebody who's transitioning, who's exploring, who cares about the nutrition offering and clean eating. But with veganism, I think there are two kinds of people who either have an allergic issue. I mean, people are lactose intolerant, or people who genuinely care about lives which stem out from every cell, right? Plant forward eating, like I said, is more about propagating the idea of cleaner eating for your body and for your soul. So why would we not call ourselves vegan is because we're also trying to have a larger audience accept us, because veganism also as a term has a lot of um, backlash by this generation, maybe millennials and Gen Z, because these guys are considered a sort of a cult community.
Which guys?
The term veganism
Okay.
for a broader audience is sort of mocked, right? It's
It
like
is.
vegetarians earlier was just limited to घास-फूस people. Like, क्या खाते होगे? तुम्हारे को तो कुछ मिलता ही नहीं होगा. But vegans, suddenly people have developed a perception that, yeah, don't mess with these guys. This is a strong group of people. They have a firm belief system.
It is the same treatment that a vegan gets that a feminist also gets. It's the same. It's very scary. Both the terms are very scary to a lot of people. I completely
You're
understand.
right. Good parallel drawn.
Yes. And what I want to get into in terms of talking about veganism is, like, I used to be a vegan like over a decade back, and I come from a meat eating family. So I've grown up eating meat. And my transition into becoming a vegan, or my plant based diet, as you prefer, was because of animals. And I was someone who's grown up very indifferent to animals. I did not care for pets. I did not really observe or look at street animals either. And other animals you don't see on a daily, regular basis. You don't really see animals that are being slaughtered out and about when you're out and about. Wild animals also, like, I've not been someone who's visited zoos or, growing up at least. So my interaction with animals has always been, or used to had been, very, very limited. So my understanding of them was also nil, if not limited. PETA ran a campaign against Ford, to boycott Ford. And that campaign is what I came across. And I started looking at their videos and their content. And that gave me a shock, at least, as to, is this what we're doing with animals? And I stopped wearing leather. That was like my first knee-jerk reaction to watching all of that content, was that I don't want to wear leather. And then, like, slowly and slowly, my knowledge expanded. And then I stopped consuming dairy. Actually, I stopped consuming meat first, and then I stopped consuming dairy and dairy products. So my weaning off process was a little slow and gradual, but I became like 100% vegan, or my diet became a plant-based diet. So my journey was not a health journey to becoming a vegan. It was literally 100% for animals, even though I personally was not around animals as such. And then, of course, like, we got a family dog, and like, things really, like, I'm a full animal person now. I'm a full advocate for animal. I slowly transitioned, the milk, and then I weaned myself off of eating paneer and all of that. And when you do that, I realized how our diets rely and lean on dairy. And like, you understand, okay, ghee is dairy, butter is dairy, paneer is dairy, milk is dairy. I observed was that, first of all, people were very uncomfortable with this new choice that I'd made. Everyone questioned me as to, what are you doing and what is this? The nutrition value in your food is just going to go away. You're not eating anything. Also, back then, because of the lack of information, and veganism was not so popular in the country, the interaction between a vegan and a vegetarian versus a vegan and a meat eater, and the clashes between those conversations, where nobody left the conversation with a better understanding of the other person's choice, but everyone left defense, like, they were very defensive, and they left with like a little bit of hatred from the conversation, which made me feel very, very sad about, the purpose of all of this is to give animals a better life, or leave animals alone and off your plate.
I think that's something, while you speak about those days, that's something prevalent even today. Even today, there are people who claim to not even enter establishments that serve meat will come and have an argument that milk, I grew up on milk, that's part of my culture, and milk products, how could you even tell me that there's something wrong with it, right? Because it's a matter of being told to somebody. So, like how you explained in the beginning of this conversation, is accepting preferences. These three kinds of people talk to each other, and the center of all of this conversation could be the animal, the center of a lot of this is also preference, right? So if any of these three subgroups are trying to be preachy and imposing, humans naturally develop their sense of ego, and then instead of something else, they start getting in an attack mode.
The way our societies are designed and our homes are designed, we are not born vegan. Although animals, like there are vegan animals and meat animals that meat eat, there are no vegetarian animals out in the wild, right? Nobody's eating paneer and nobody's eating cheese. Dietary preference is very, very clear. You're carnivores or you're herbivores, right? But human beings are not like that. We are not born into, most of us at least, now maybe there could be some homes that are vegan homes, and there definitely are actually. But do you have like, a suggestion for people to have better conversations?
It's something, see, thought leadership comes into play there, right? I mean, and thought leaders could be just individuals like yourselves who could create forums where you initiate conversation from a very don't go extreme from the first go, or establishments like ours and many others, or where you don't completely go changing someone on day one. You think of a slow transition through education and awareness and a sense of belonging, right? So what we also did, we were not completely vegan to begin with. Greener initially was 30 to 40% vegan options. And if you had to have a mission on a longer scale, you had to flow gradually. If you became extreme at the word go, then you're just completely splitting the groups and their preferences, because maybe you and your 5 friends go out, or you and your 5 family members go out, and then somebody just doesn't want to be at a place which is only specific to something.
For sure. People still find it very hard to eat with me because they're like, oh my God, you're not going to eat this and you're not going to eat that. And then what are we going to eat? And then you end up canceling plans also altogether.
So they have to also perceive that you'll be accepting when they sit around on a table and they are eating what they're eating. I mean, sure, all of us love to tell our loved ones, people we care about, to choose the right things in
What
every
we
level.
think is the right thing. Yeah.
What we think is the right thing. But if we're gentle about it and we're conscious about it, I think we will get through, because every human is listening to the one that he or she does care about too.
In fact, I would go a step further and be like, don't recommend anything to anyone. If you have made a change in your life, that is wonderful. It's also because of your personal learnings and your personal observations and where your life is currently. The circumstances of somebody else's life, even if they are your partner or your parents or your sibling or your friends, no matter how close they are to you, they could be going through a different time in their lives. And people really learn by looking at others. This has been my observation.
I was about to connect on that. We are essentially social beings. We live by the laws of the society. Now, if you could convert certain behaviors or patterns of consumption as a community behavior, bang, you are getting accepted a lot more faster than you'd want to also. So maybe find ways of stitching a community together, and that will let your mission succeed at a better rate.
Veganism has its ancient roots in India, primarily. But surprisingly, veganism is not something people are aware of it. And there are vegans in our country, of course. But it's not something that is welcomed or accepted with open arms, at least not in my observation, which is very surprising to me because it really, like, the Ayurvedic life talks about, and like you said, even from your cultural context, leaving animals in peace and living in coexistence with nature is something that comes very naturally to us culturally, but we've somehow lost that cultural context. And veganism was made popular in the modern society by Donald Watson in 1944 in England.
It's a Western phenomena we're
It
adopting.
is. It is.
Yeah.
We tend to do that when we have everything with us, but when somebody else does it better, then we are interested in doing it. Just like yoga.
Aspiration. Like India had everything, but we've absorbed it back once it was glorified in the West.
But I think there is also inherent racism in our societies, which is why we are not able to value what we have completely.
I think that's the colonial hangover that I always, broadly classify. Anything that makes us emulate the West is a colonial hangover. When your minds are wiped out for 200 years, there's little, I mean, it takes time to regenerate your original thought. But I think lots of people these days are doing their best to take Indian cultural values to another level, not just in India, but abroad. But coming back to the point of veganism in India and why that never got mainstream. I mean, look, Ayurveda or consumption of dairy-based products was something which was medicinal back in the days. It wasn't part of your routine. If we really would go back, I mean, when a cow was a animal that was worshipped by, let's say, Hinduism, right? Now, to be able to draw something of it for self-consumption was not an everyday routine. It was something that, okay, you're unable to find something, you have a cow in your house that's going to provide you things to nourish you. But it wasn't the only way to, it wasn't an everyday consumption. In Jainism, we go an extra step and we don't even end up consuming things that grow underground because they have more microorganisms, so which is more life. So that speaks about minimizing any violence to single cell, dual celled, or five senses like humans or animals. So any harm to any cellular beings.
I was very curious about why in Jainism they don't eat root vegetables.
More microorganisms, and soil of course has more insects. So when you're digging out of soil or growing something, it has more life. A root vegetable, a component of it can grow into another plant itself, which means it has more life, right? So where the core philosophy of Jainism is to minimize any form of destruction to life.
When you tell people about these kind of preferences and educate people on the cultural context of certain things, it becomes very complicated to comprehend that how much am I supposed to leave off my plate, and then what am I supposed to eat at the end of the day. How do you look at it? Like, what is okay to leave off your plate? What must be left off your plate? Are there things that should be left off your plate, or is everything okay to be on your plate?
This is where the soul conversation comes in. Now, anybody's pain should not be part of your body, right? When an animal is being slaughtered for your consumption, and it's not because you're hungry and you have no source of food. It's because it's a delicacy that kind of affects your soul on a deeper level. You're taking somebody else's pain inside your body and streaming it down into your soul. So I prefer to say that meat should eventually become not routine consumption. It could be maybe something you gradually tone down. Indians who claim to be non-vegetarians proudly and sort of don't really appreciate vegetarianism, or also not eating that much meat, to be honest. Apart from that, what else could be left off your table is processed foods. I mean, food is medicine, right? I mean, and we don't want, there are more cases of all sorts of complicated diseases that are happening, which are not just affecting our minds, but different organs of our body itself. I mean, cancer being one of them. And all of these are coming out of things which are processed. If something is supposed to be consumed in its natural form, like you earlier said, an animal in the jungle is either eating pure meat or just direct plants, right? The more processes we add to our food that we consume, the harder it is for our natural enzymes Our body is a great machine, but that great machine is meant to consume and consume everything that is natural to this environment.
Everything in balance, and how we have reduced the life of animals. They live in depression and they are abused from life to death. And factory farming is something that everyone looks away from, but it is something that is just very evil and cruel. And that is something that I really also fail to understand about human behavior, as to why we think it is okay to do in the name of food. Or even if you end up farming an animal, then of course their entire life is just devoted to our requirements. I will not call them needs because it's not need based, but if, for instance,
It's a want.
yeah, like we'll make like leather out of their skin, and we medicine also, and food, of course. I feel like if we can shift the consumption and if we can shift the demand, then the supply shifts accordingly.
I sort of disagree a little on that philosophy. I will be bold enough to say that. No, the problem is also uh, economic, right? Because the moment you stop factory farming and turn everything to farm fed and organic, and the demand would be so high that the prices and the availability will always be low.
Don't you think the demand is going to be high because of the way we consume right now? Our consumption is such that our production is such that we consume a certain way, but we waste a lot. I don't think a lot of animals that are killed for meat are all consumed. I think a lot also goes to waste.
Yeah, there was, I mean, I'll just fill you in on that data where I think a, a lakh or maybe 10,000 bodies of these farm animals were found at one of these sites, dump sites outside Delhi, which is right, which is exactly that their bodies get infected or decayed or are just, there are not enough takers sometimes. But if they were not factory farmed and if the preference remained the same, free range, the free range animals, you cannot have that many free range animals, so the meat will get so expensive that that some people who continue to have that preference will no longer be able to afford it. There'll be chaos, there'll be other sorts of wrongdoings that will come into picture. So it has to be, a preference has to change first, and then I mean, factories are only producing what consumers are asking for, whether it's meat or clothes. Humans are not supposed to consume the amount we're consuming. We're in the age of abundance. In the age of abundance, because you know everything is available in ample, there's no scarcity, you overconsume in certain areas. And to meet that overconsumption, production again factories, which now I'm calling farms as factories, because factories suddenly have to push in more fertilizer, push in more insecticides, push in more chemicals to just exponentially grow the yield of their farms. And it's a very philosophical problem, because humans, if they started consuming mindfully and stop chasing abundance, a lot of these problems will solve. Your food naturally has enough spices, enough condiments for it to be flavorful. You don't need 5 more bottles of sauces to be added to things.
I've grown up on McDonald's and Domino's, and those are things that, like there's when you have like extreme munchies, I still do indulge in those, but I don't leave satisfied from that meal the way I used to. The food only has started tasting different for me. I don't enjoy it the way I used to. And I'm literally, even I love food. It's not like I don't love food. And I'm literally dancing when I'm eating like a good nutritious food. Anything that is like low in spices and low in oil. I love eat. Like I'm relishing every bite. Like it has switched for me. That how you feel like, oh my god, like I would love a burger. I would love to like munch on chip sauce. I used to be that person and now I'm this person. My happiness that I derive from food is still there, but the food that I derive it from has completely changed.
The freshness of ingredients has changed a lot. The processes have completely ruined what you eat. Maybe a McDonald's you had 20 years ago had better ingredients going into it, and then the world exploded and they had to support 10,000 McDonald's out there. And then how do you get a supply chain for all of that? Is by artificial production of everything, cost optimization of things, because turned into a business. So from something that is supposed to be a natural home cooked behavior, for it to be commercialized to that level that you get a burger for $20, it had to happen.
True. Like I saw there was a study done on ketchup where they compared the ingredients from like 10 years back to now, and the ingredients are just completely different. And that happens with everything. I feel like we are only bothered about what meets the eye, which is on our plate. Okay. We are not still very educated or even the willingness to find out about our ingredients. Ingredients are of all sorts. We have vegetables, we have fruits, we have spices, we have meat, we have dairy. Everything is on our plate. Let's just have the entire wholesome, inclusive plate. Okay. Nothing is out. But our willingness to understand the ingredients that go into making what finally comes on the plate is still very, very low. In fact, there is a friction. Like you resist knowing. If somebody tells you something, it could be a very defensive way of educating someone. That is debatable. But when someone is trying to tell you something, or even when you're reading something, I feel like there is like a knee-jerk reaction where you're like, I don't want to know so much. I just want to eat. Looking at it from not a societal perspective, but from an individual perspective, what do you think? Why do people find comfort in looking away instead of finding out more?
It's a cultural issue because it's how it's rooted into our system where, you know, several of my, not several, but I would say just one specific friend back in the days would tell me every time I'd offer her something and say, this is good for you, this is healthy. And one day she stopped me and said, how? Right? So we've grown up by being told that eat this, this is good for you, eat that, this is good for you, from my parents' generation, not really explaining in detail how. How is a spinach good for us? They could have simply said that it will increase the iron content in your body. I mean, we don't go scientific when we're being told about good or bad. And then when people like us or our generation starts relaying this information to others, if we haven't gathered enough information, we won't sound convincing enough. If you just tell somebody, don't eat this, it's just fried and oily and all of that, a person just doesn't think what oil does that to them. The whole concept of saturated and unsaturated fats came into our conversation of nutrition not very long ago. So we also, I'm sure the first decades of our life, if our parents weren't conscious providers to us, we wouldn't know what is a saturated fat, what is an unsaturated, what is simple carb or complex carb, or things like that. I was explaining to my son today morning, he's fixed a Friday a month for Maggie. It's fixed. It's 5-year-old. And he asked me, Baba, what's your Maggie day of the month? I said, I love Maggie as a flavor, but I don't eat it. I don't eat it maybe more than once a year to just fulfill that palate for me. He's like, why? Then imagine explaining to a 5-year-old what is maida firstly, or white flour, and what a packaged good is doing to the system, and what is the system. He doesn't know what his body has, doesn't know what his stomach versus gut versus something else. So those conversations, I think I was fortunate when we were kids. I don't think I grew up on processed foods. I did not have colas or Pepsis or a lot of wrapper-based foods. We were made to eat so many fresh things that anything we desired was made fresh.
My advice to people who want to just educate themselves is just please start reading ingredients. I feel like if you start reading ingredients, you yourself will make the change. It will come very organically to you. Nobody will have to force any kind of conversation, any kind of unpleasantness on anyone. You just read what you are consuming, and your body and your mind is going to tell you, okay, I want this and I don't want this.
It's also a factor of age, which derives more wisdom, I suppose, where
Yeah.
yeah, you can't, because the ingredient lists are so wide that while the conversation saying that minimal ingredients is better for you, but somebody who has no sense will suddenly be lost in that whole world of ingredients.
We anyway don't understand most ingredient names, whether it be our food or our skincare or like our beauty products. None of that. We don't understand those terms. These are very like, these are chemicals and like scientific terms. Hack to reading ingredients is just that from top to bottom, the first few ingredients are what the particular product has in maximum.
Maximum percentage.
Yes. So see what, like if you're eating a chocolate cookie, see how much chocolate it actually has. And if you're eating chips, see how much potato it has. Like whatever, simple things, simple decisions. I'm a big believer in the KISS philosophy. Keep it simple, silly. I feel like that is also, that's been my hack for sustainable living. I keep it simple, and if I'm not able to keep it simple, I just avoid it.
Minimal ingredients. I think that's the key. Goes with your ketchups also, right? I mean, finally, it has 3% tomatoes.
Yeah. True. No tomatoes sometimes. Like
No
I have
tomatoes.
worked for this one client of mine. They used to produce some food products, and they basically, you know how you provide ingredients for different foods, like you're a supplier. So I've been to their production factory and facility, and that was a very eye-opening experience for me. I was like, there's no food here. There is just powder and
I
liquid,
give you a fun fact.
and it's
This
mostly black colored or
soya
dark
chap
green.
that you see
Oh
everywhere.
yes, of course.
You know what soya chap, which is sold as a healthy kebab,
Yeah.
is 90% maida and
Yeah.
10% soy.
Yeah.
And it's everywhere.
Do you think is veganism better for the planet?
Uh, veganism could be definitely better for the planet because it also controls the meat industry to a great extent.
Should we think about the planet when we are thinking about food or when we're consuming food?
Depends how selfish you are. You could just say, I'm going to have a great life, and then I don't care about the generations that come after me. Obviously, I'm trying to be cocky here. But obviously, the planet is important because overconsumption has completely deprived the planet of all of its resources. Not just our air, but our land is devoid of resources. Your food doesn't taste the same because it's no longer mineral rich. It's completely exploited from all of those nutrients. And for you to even sustain the next 30 years consciously, not consciously, in a healthy way, these changes will have to be made. Otherwise, natural disasters, of course, have happened in the past also, from the Ice Age onwards, and will continue to happen. But other disasters, other diseases, whether it was COVID, but there are more tons of flus come out of bird flu, swine flu, this flu, that flu, come out of just meat consumption.
We are living longer than we used to. The quality of life better. Is it like worth living 90 years, 110 years if the planet is not as beautiful, as clean, the air is not clean?
Very wise thing to say, really. I would say that you're right. There's no point of being Brian Johnson and living for 100+ years when you're not living in a vacuum. You're not living in isolation.
Plans to go and live on
You're not-
Mars. I don't know.
Yeah. The world around you is a disaster, and they are going to inflict their pain directly, indirectly. The air, the environment, the emotion, everything around you is going to make every year more unlivable.
The kind of air that we breathe, and I'm not going to limit this conversation to just the air in Indian cities. The quality of air is degrading everywhere, and our natural resources in the natural lungs of our planet are being cut down. If you just see on the outskirts of cities where, you know, the greenery at least used to be or still is remaining, I'm just seeing new housing. And I was thinking, if there are people who are going to hibernate and go and live to those in those new places, they obviously need entertainment around themselves and they need convenience around themselves. And then you have to provide for that convenience. So you have to create malls and you have to create eateries. Like there has to be delivery service, because the way we are designing our lives, we live on 10-minute to 30-minute deliveries, and you have to create that ecosystem for any new building that has cropped up, any new office that has cropped up. And do we really need so much abundance of having so many cafes all over the place that are also essentially serving the same thing everywhere?
The overconsumption that has been forced into people. I know this is a business we do, but our I won't talk about ourselves, but you're right. There are cafes, businesses propping out everywhere, demanding consumption that shouldn't exist. Every corporate office should not have 5 eateries down there, because people start getting down and consuming coffee every couple of hours. Their bodies don't need it. It's the forced. You're kind of forcing them to consume. Now that is a problem of capitalism. Capitalism will always destroy the planet, human instinct. Uh, of course, you're creating more businesses, you're creating more employment, populations growing, so you will have to create these townships. And for these integrated townships to exist, of course, there are homes left vacant. You have to find ways for businesses to come back and decongest cities. Now, it's a very policy related decision, but coming back to the cafe consumption side of it, India hasn't even touched formal or organized restaurant businesses to even 10% of any other developed country. But yes, with the rise of more people working outside their homes, it is increasing, and it is up to people to mindfully consume. But cafe culture is disastrous. Now, when I travel anywhere, I'm tired because my entire day is going about just sitting at a cafe and consuming rather than absorbing the life of. The purpose of travel is completely being taken over by oversupply of products.
I travel to Goa once every year. The last time that I went to Goa, that I was driving and I saw there was one cafe after another, and they were all new cafes. I was not familiar with most of these places, and the food tastes more or less the same. The menu offering is not diverse. It's not like this is a Spanish restaurant, this is an Italian restaurant, this is a Goan restaurant, this is a South Indian, Tamilian restaurant. None of that. It was all avocado toast plus pizza plus noodles plus smoothie bowl. It was a very schizophrenic, confused menu, but it was the same everywhere.
It's a forced cultural expression onto you that do this because this is what you should be doing while you're traveling. No, while you're traveling, you should absorb, you should talk to all the people of that. Go to a small kiosk and have conversation with somebody who's standing there and doing his work. That is where you will absorb more from than sitting in a restaurant like that and doing the same as you do.
Okay, let's move on to talking about meat. Although none of us really eat meat, but because it is a very big part of food for so many of us, I want to first of all start by saying that I don't think eating meat, there's anything wrong with eating meat. There are so many cold places where your survival depends on, and also there are places where vegetables don't grow, so you end up relying on meat consumption. And like you had mentioned sometime during our conversation also, that whatever is locally available to you, if you consume that, you are just naturally being conscious and sustainable in how you eat. So starting off at that point, that meat is not the enemy. The way we reduce the life of animals is what I feel needs to change. to just make sure that the animal has had a decent life. Forget a happy life or whatever, but a decent life, that they're not subject to constant abuse, they're not depressed, they're not taken away from their kids, or the kids are not taken away from them. There are just unspeakable things that happen everywhere.
Well, it's difficult to have agriculture. I think whatever is available in your land is what you're supposed to consume, which also will lead those places to have animal farms. And now animal farms, how they're run, is something which cannot be done through governance, through policies. I mean, the governments can put stricter controls, and every country has some sort of an animal husbandry, animal welfare board which could look into that. But I don't think in the way capitalism works and the way things will be required in the quantities that will ever change. I mean, few people are fortunate to be able to consume cleaner, less karmically indulgent meat products, but few are aware of it also. Very few people even today are aware that cows produce milk only when they're artificially impregnated and they produce a baby. And that's where your milk is coming from. So you're forcing a calf out of an animal which is literally being raped frequently to serve your food preferences. People living by the ocean are consuming seafood, that's okay. But when it goes to overfisheries to send it to a landlocked region, which was genetically the people are not supposed to eat seafood also, right? So those kind of practices can only happen by personal preferences, because as long as capitalism exists in the world, people will produce because there's somebody else to pay money for it. Like we don't live in caves, I think capitalism will persist. People will just get more mindful. I think the way trends are moving, I mean, you see that sobriety is the new way of living and alcoholism is reducing gradually by 10 to 15% a year. Similarly, meat consumptions are reducing. Uh, I I think there's a strange statistics I read that 25% of the young Americans have turned vegans. Now, these are just coming out of some level of consciousness that is being derived.
You first of all find a lot of research done which is very like US based. If you see, everything is like US, in the US, this is what the statistics are like. To have local statistics also, I find that there's a scarcity of that. But in just my observation, because we primarily belong to a vegetarian, especially in the north, not in the south, not in the east, but I think north is more vegetarian friendly in our country. And I am seeing a reverse trend where I'm being one of those people myself, where people are exploring eating meat who were born into vegetarian families also.
Also, a lot of agrarian societies, apart from India, are consuming consciously, because then the masses, let's use the word of classes and masses, the masses, while they stay closer to their areas of origin, have continued to follow tradition and consume what's around them. It's only that processed food goers are the only ones that penetrate into those segments. But the majority of the world is still eating local produce.
In our country, we call meat non-veg. They are animals and they are called non-veg. Like, even if you look at a menu of, literally, this is very common, any restaurant or cafe, big or small, they also, the title is non-veg, means non-veg appetizers. And I find that really very funny. And like, it was making me think about how the extent of desensitization we need to make it okay for us to eat something. Because I definitely feel that if a meat eating person, if they were ever to visit a slaughterhouse, if they were ever to visit any of these places where animals are just kept, you don't have to even be killing them, the conditions in which they are being kept, it is unappetizing. We also rename animals when we talk of them as food, like hens are called chicken, pigs are called pork, cows are called beef. goats are called lamb or mutton.
They don't want to have that emotion coming into you that you're taking away a life that you've seen. So it is very consciously done, I'm sure.
This is a full thing of capitalism only. That if you want to sell more, please rename all of them.
Call a tomato ketchup a ketchup and not the stabilizers that are dominating it.
I know, like we call a broccoli, we call a tomato, we'll call a cucumber, but a hen has to be chicken and a cow has to be.
That whitewashing exists to do everything. Yeah.
I feel like that is some food for thought for like our listeners.
I think with seafood, they don't do it. An octopus is an octopus, an eel is an eel. But a rabbit meat is a rabbit meat, a duck meat is a duck meat.
I'll tell you why. At least what this is the conclusion that I've drawn. Very acute observation on sea animals. It's because we ourselves are land animals and our association is stronger with land animals. So it is okay for, to call a fish, lobster a lobster, an octopus, and so on and so forth.
Because they've turned into delicacies.
These are delicacies. Dog meat, rabbit, cats also are being eaten in some parts of the world. These are all delicacies.
There was this guy came from Australia was speaking about crocodile meat yesterday, which is crocodile meat. And so
those are also wild. Rabbits are not wild animals, but these are like free animals that we end up like eating, or pets that we have like dogs and cats that end up becoming food, and rabbits also are pet friendly,
I think it's mostly India that controls this narrative, but otherwise I think they speak freely about what they're consuming. America is a different world. It's a world of immigrants, and everyone has to mix in their cultures and offer what's best suited for the capitalism of the country.
You're right. I haven't traveled that much, but at least my observation in Europe has been that people, even in Asian countries, they are honest about who they're eating and what they're eating. They are also, like I mentioned, there are some countries that don't grow vegetables and the preference is meat, like Iceland, for instance. They are also, the local inhabitants are also naturally, they are hunters. They still hunt. Moving on to vegetarianism, paneer has famously been known as the vegetarian's mate. It is a vegetarian diet is also, it heavily relies on dairy. And I feel like we tend to overcompensate for the lack of meat in a vegetarian diet, especially in our country up north.
Paneer was also brought into the country by the, I think, the Mughals or the invaders from before. So it wasn't part of the Indian natural food that we used to consume. But yes, you're continuing where you said that we vegetarians try to extract protein more from dairy-based products. You are right, because if not paneer, they push so much milk down your system to while you're growing up. They don't even, I mean, parents don't even realize that just like in animals, a human does not need a mother's milk beyond the age of infancy, right? So maybe 2 years. 2 years is naturally women are able to feed their babies. The supply lasts for 2 to 3 years, right? Is how it's supposed to be. So you're supposed to get that calcium coming into your system only until a certain period of time.
Our body breaks down food. I think just the lack of awareness of that we feel like it's a direct thing. Like, literally like how you take a pill, the way we also treat supplements, that this is magnesium, this is calcium, this is protein, this is
synthesized supplements are synthesized. I mean, your body may absorb a micro percentage of those. You might be consuming 23 or 24 gram of a supplement protein, but your body's not converting all of that into a muscle food, like what a natural food would have done to you.
I was very surprised to know that people still think that cows just produce milk all year long instead of when they have a calf. And it's because we get milk all year long. This is a very common misconception that I have come across. And I'm like, but they are a mammal just like us. And we reproduce one child at a time, and cows reproduce exactly the same way.
It's, of course, the moment you talk about this to people, they suddenly are alerted. So I think consciousness is growing, but most of us thought the same. I think while growing up as kids, we don't even realize the concept of artificial insemination and impregnation of cows to produce a baby just to get that extra milk.
I feel like that responsibility is on adults, not kids. Kids are just naturally, their instincts are great, and you can just nurture their instincts. But to nurture their instincts, you have to be knowledgeable yourself.
There are lots of farms that claim to be, that we take care of our cows, we feed them good food. They care about all of that aspect. But for them to sustain their business, they're still injecting cows to be pregnant, to be producing more. Which is why when you first said veganism or vegetarianism for planet, between the two, veganism would be better because that indirectly will hit the meat industry also. There won't be enough cow meat or buffalo meat or for people to consume lesser leather, lesser all of that.
Alternatives are coming into place, and like because I personally don't use leather, so I am always on the lookout for alternatives, and they have to be sustainable. Like the one thing about non-leather products is that they don't last you long, and it has been true. Of course, you have to buy more and more regularly, but things are changing. I feel like once a demand is created for something, the supply will catch up with it. On from the three dietary preferences, veganism, vegetarianism, and meat eating, do you think veganism is the future?
Unfortunately, not. Uh, there are several instances from around the world where vegan restaurants are just shutting down. People have embraced the idea of veganism, while a minority of the population has continued being strict about their preferences. A majority with fair knowledge have found a balance. They create a balance between everything that's available, and if they can consume it consciously, they will retain parts of other components out of vegetarianism, out of meat consumption. Um, so many articles are out there that vegan restaurants are shutting down very, very frequently because there are not enough takers.
There are people who are vegans and they have 100% plant-based diet. Them, and I would include myself in that. They do not even prefer going to a vegan restaurant because I feel like, also because it's so fresh and new as a culture still, the culture of veganism, that you tend to overcompensate in terms of taste. So people don't really like going to vegan restaurants because things are maybe sometimes deep fried and sometimes
There are
coloring.
few things there. There have been people who have been vegan since 30 years. There have been vegan restaurants that have existed since 30 years. But at the same time, when these vegan restaurants are trying to be more acceptable by masses, what they're trying to do is compensate through by frying the food extra, creating alternate meats to switch their preference, which are super synthetic and non-natural. And finally, people who have truly become vegans for the right reason have balanced their consumption
Like when I became vegan and there were no options to eat out, but I did not had to cut down on a lot except for maybe avoid paneer. But I was eating all the vegetables. I was eating roti. I was eating rice. I was eating everything. Like
is Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka. It is completely vegan without even you asking for it because it's all coconut based. It's coconut milk, it's coconut butter, it's coconut oil. All of that is coming out of coconut. So naturally, also it existed. It's only that in the northern parts of the country where it was maybe necessary, or I don't know the historical context of. I come from Rajasthan where ghee is consumed like it's getting over tomorrow, and
That's true. My dad, like, he had, they, and his siblings, they've all grown up on like a spoon of ghee every day. That was their diet.
that was a time where they used to toil a lot. Indians had to work hard a lot, and they needed fat to sustain them through the day. Or
To have a car, and he used to like commute to school or college and everywhere else by cycle,
in
on
today's
foot.
lifestyle, the same quantity of ghee is terrible for the body.
Yeah.
It'll lead to all sorts of cholesterol issues and heart issues.
Local cuisine or fusion food? What do you prefer?
Fusion without bastardization is great because essentially there is no real Indian food that we eat anymore, right? Whatever we eat and we call as Indian food has been like chilies came from Mexico and India. Tomatoes are not native to India. Wheat is not native to India. We had millets and rice as varieties. So India has adopted spices to legumes to grains from the world. So that already the
Brought
fusion started.
everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there were Arabs on this coast, the Asians on the Silk Route. So India has already had fusion into its food long ago. And if that is systematically done and not bastardized, then fusion can really come out with wonderful flavors. Line that you try to create the like an avocado golgappa.
Oh, yeah. And matcha is in everything. Inequality in food, starvation, and wastage, it coexists. Equality is a myth, and imbalance is the reality of the times that we live in. Do you agree?
Absolutely agree. I mean, uh, you'll see that people from a certain class of society are not even exposed to nutritive food. So the easiest way they find is to eat carbohydrates that destroy their bodies. They lack nutrition and hence don't grow fully their bodily functions, I suppose. So it shouldn't have been because all societies were primarily agrarian and produce should have been available to everyone despite their economic background. But today's world has turned out to be such that if there's something growing right next to you, you don't get a bite of that also because it's growing to a rich country. I mean, if avocados were such nutritious things, they should have stayed within the Latin American territory and fed the poverty stricken farming systems there. But then it became so premium, or even cacao for that matter, right? If all of these things became so premium that the population which was growing them could not consume them. The world needed it more and had the price to pay for it. I was in London last week, and a dragon fruit was £8. When you're in Thailand, where it was, Southeast Asia, where it was first grown, a pound of it could give you a kilo of it.
Yeah. Like, I am seeing through our conversation how capitalism and food just go hand in hand.
Fortunately,
That should change. Like, I really hope that we can shift that. That it sounds very depressing the moment we talk about food in that context, and then capitalism. It is all because of capitalism.
somehow, so the economically backward societies they have the access. They've all had a piece of land and animal to provide for them historically, but they've been so drifted into working for something larger that they've given up on their life, and then capitalism came in and fed them everything processed to sustain them through their working cycle. So they're consuming packaged food all day long. They think they're eating, they think they're fed, but what they're eating is completely disastrous for their bodies, right?
I also like want to point out that in terms of inequality in food and the way we consume food, inequality in the nutrition also is people who have insane working hours and the way they consume food because they are in office for most of their meals, and the way they are consuming food from cafes around them, and they don't have time for a home cooked meal. They are away from their towns when they're working in big cities.
I mean, they have to find what is the right balance: success, money, or health and longevity.
The last question that I want to ask you is the representation of women in paying kitchens of restaurants. I still don't feel that there are a lot of women who are working in these kitchens. And this is a common known fact that women work in kitchens in homes. They have been for centuries. Why aren't we seeing more women? Of course, like there are women of my generations and generations to follow. We are not kitchen oriented people at all. I don't know how to cook a lot anyway myself, but still there is still an imbalance for some reason because there has been from the get go.
Men who want to work as chefs. I mean, see, majority of the chefs in Indian kitchen are people who are coming from villages who have an ability to cook. These are not your trained chefs coming out of hospitality schools. Majority. Of course, five-star hotels have their barriers to have you come from a certain background. But we, for example, take pride in transforming people, teaching a cleaner how to cook to become a head chef.
Okay.
Right? So, firstly, it's these people who come out of their villages to earn to send money back, which typically does not happen with women. That many women aren't taking up professional careers as chefs.
Women again in homes, a lot of moms are not cooking or anything, but our helps and our cooks are still mostly female. But in kitchens of restaurants,
Cannot. So let's take a real life situation, right? We're privileged to have somebody come to our home and cook a meal for us and go, despite us knowing how to cook. Now these people are also running a family of their own, so for them to commit 12 hours to something is not easy, because between commute, a day's 9 hours work, and commute, 12 hours just go by. And they cannot start early in their lives, because if you're coming from a certain economic background, you're married by the age you hit that, right? So the society pushes you into a choice that you don't make for yourself. So you're married, which means you don't come into the employment cycle at all. And once you're married, you choose jobs which suit your new family. And this job doesn't suit your new family because you go into a kitchen which is dominated by 90% men. We get the only applications for women chef that we get are people who've come from Le Cordon Bleu or a vegan school or this school or this school. Mostly privileged people are coming, privileged kids are coming to be chefs at our kitchen. I've never had a person who's come in from a point of view that, okay, I'm earning money here to send it back to my home, and I need a job to be a chef in your company.
someone knows how to cook food vis-a-vis a woman who is cooking still in our homes versus a completely untrained male who comes from the same circumstance.
But without sounding sexist, it's a natural order that at home, a woman's natural instinct is to nurture and provide and take care of everyone who's in that system, and a man's natural instinct is to provide. Now, the job of a restaurant chef wasn't a primitive job, right? It's a modern day job. So that transition hasn't happened.
Really, I did not expect the answer to be like so engraved in tradition. No, no, it's not about you personally. It's about an industry, and I did not expect this. I was like, maybe I'm confused or I'm missing the point on something. I don't know why this gap is, because I'll tell you from like a woman's point of view. I'm a woman, and I'm surrounded by so many women, and then even the women who work in our homes as cooks, it's no one's natural instinct to be a provider or a nurturer. That is definitely the way society was divided, and I guess it's still divided in that sense.
Said it's the new home's requirement to have something flexible, and that is something that's acceptable for them.
And it has been
Indians
the way
still don't
things
accept
are.
that their sons and daughters have a job. So the idea to have a job itself is something that is not acceptable to people. So, like I
That
said, I don't even
changes.
have application. I would be happy to hire them. Even people who sometimes apply to work want to be the front serving staff. If women do come in there, become the front serving staff, but never have one of them asked us that I want to learn how to be a chef.
Sous chefs and head chefs. In that, is the parity still like that?
I mean, at the higher position, of course, there are more women coming in to take those positions because that is a career track. That is not earning to feed your family.
Hard.
Yeah, so a career track, women are coming who are educating themselves with the finest education systems, working hard. They're really good. And it's definitely changing.
Encouraging. I hope that'll trickle down.
So culinary schools somehow have more or at least a 50-50 balance of female versus male students. I just don't know where they go.
We must find.
They
Very
must find out.
interesting.
You can
Yeah.
only know what comes to you, right? When we
Like-
put a posting out there, even when we're seeking applications for a role, we just don't have women chefs applying.
Anyone knows the answer to this, please let us know in comments because this is very interesting. Why are they leaking? Why aren't they going through? Or is it not lucrative enough? But I don't look at any work as a man's work or a woman's work. Everything is gender fluid now.
No? Women who want to work will want to have a very, probably a better office job, a more respectable job. I
Personally,
don't know.
know of like amazing women head chefs. Like Ritu Dalmia is like one of my favorite chefs, and she's been in the business for so long.
There's Mega Kohli. So Delhi has a fair share of star chefs, women star chefs, more than men. But that's what you're saying. The top level has it. There is somebody who wanted to start a restaurant in Delhi to have an all-women chef's kitchen and all-women serving team. But even despite having that as a goal pre-launch, did not sustain.
Thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. It was lovely to have you here. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with us.
Definitely. And it opened up some of my thoughts also because I was speaking freely and exploring the questions that surprisingly came my way. Yeah.
Amazing. I still feel like I did not talk enough about animals, but I think like no matter what I talk about, I will bring in animals into it.
And bring in capitalists in that.
Oh, capitalism was an eye-opening thing for me. Like I understand the concept of capitalism and I know it's all around us, but I'm like, oh my god, like I'm leaving with a slightly heavy heart as to like, oh my god, everything is bad because of capitalism. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you guys had fun and you took something away from our conversation. Please help us grow, like, share, subscribe, follow. Vaibhav, do you want to put in a good word for me to the audience?
Himanshi has perspectives that will open a new can of worms for you. So be careful, but be prepared also. But it's fun. It's insightful. And you'll explore a lot more about yourself and the world than you thought you would.